to the Over the Line podcast. I'm your host, James McGee. This podcast is dedicated to reshaping the future of American soccer by having real conversations about the challenges holding our system back and exploring the opportunities to help take the game over the line. My mission is simple: to uncover the truth, amplify the voices of trailblazers, and help educate the next generation of players and parents so they can navigate the system and help unlock their full potential, both on and off the field. If this conversation inspires you, challenges your perspective, or adds value to your journey, please be sure to rate, review, and share it so we know it's making an impact. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Growing up in the U.S., going from the club system all through DA into college soccer, playing in Europe, playing with the U.S. futsal national team, and now channeling his passion into coaching and Beast Residency, I'm happy to welcome Kyle Wilson onto the podcast. Kyle, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate the time to chat and discuss football, especially in youth.
Yep, love it. Love it. So I think, first of all, thank you for joining. My first question for you is, on your Instagram bio, you have your mission stated as, your mission is to save U.S. youth soccer for the players. Yep. What does that mean to you?
You want the short answer or long answer?
The long answer.
So, I mean, you've been through this whole system like I have. You've probably played at every level like I have. And now you're into coaching, so you kind of see a lot of the stuff. But what I will say is it's a supply and demand curve. And I would put the number higher than 80%. Let's just say 80%. 80% of parents are not educated. They're not knowing what to look for. They think they know what to look for because you have MLS Next, you have ECNL, you have GA, you have NAL, you have all these leagues, right? Goes on and goes so forth. But we're at the crux of the problem where the focus is on Saturday and Sunday, not long-term. So long-term, we envision being three things. One, the person, the student, and the athlete. So if you tie all those three things together, we are at a severe, what word do I want to use? Like under-deliverance of taking care of children. So then you look at a cultural aspect. We are not Brazil, we're not Spain, we're not France, we're not England. I mean, pick your country that it lives, breathes, sleeps football. We're not that. Most of our children start football 6 years old, 7 years old, maybe touch the ball a couple of times, maybe watched a professional game, but more than likely they've probably been around basketball, been around baseball, been around football, hockey, whatever it is. So where I see a huge market, huge opportunity is meeting children, the American children at their level, which I believe, based on the average American child that just has that experience I just mentioned, barely played soccer, doesn't have skills, doesn't have any ability, never probably ever touched the ball except maybe 10 times, is to focus on 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, and 5 versus 5. So 2v2 being U7, U8, 3v3 being U9 and U10, and 5v5 being U11, U12. And I think doing that, we can provide children, one, a better soccer experience. Two, or I should even say the best soccer experience. Two, they get to have fun. They get to be involved in the game. They get to attack, defend, transition. They get thousands more touches on the ball percentage-wise. They get to do everything in the game versus being stuck in a single position. I'm sure you've either seen it or experienced it yourself, where a coach only puts a player into one single position. They never get to do anything else, which is a hazardous moment, but it's all about the result on Saturday and Sunday. And I think just the key thing is putting children first. So that's kind of the model of why I put it that way, of saving USU soccer, because the way that I view the game based on the supply and demand curve, this is all about money. So that's why I use the word cash cow. Some people, I use that word. And it's not about what's in the best interest of children. And I think, obviously we have a pay-to-play market. The reason why we have pay-to-play is because compensation before formation is only available to MLS programs, so MLS clubs, versus like I was in Brazil about 2 months ago. Just in the state of Sao Paulo, they have 84 clubs that have soccer free for children. 84. In Florida, we have 2. It's non-comparable.
Yeah.
And there are no financial incentives for programs, whatever other program there are, to be free, except to give back goodwill. So knowing that pay-to-play is going to happen, it's going to exist, it's not going to change. we can still put children first and still make money. I fundamentally believe that, and that's the process that we've been having. Definitely not perfect, but I think if you put the children first, you can do a lot of good things.
Yeah, no, I think your perspective on it is interesting too. And when you look at the US youth system compared to Europe and all these other countries, like they have the natural incentive to put individual development at the forefront because they can see a return on that investment. Where in the US, for the most part, there is not that incentive because the clubs aren't going to get paid off for developing that player, selling him, getting a transfer fee, whatever that may be. And I
I would
think,
even,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I would even say that the incentive is to win on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah,
Because when you win, parents want to be a part of a winning program.
correct.
Every
Correct.
time we've had every time, let's use my club. Every time we've had a poor result, I am guaranteed to get at least one or two phone calls or text messages. Hey, coach, got to talk to you on Monday. And they're upset about the result. They're upset about whatever. Like we had one quick example would be we had a tournament 6 months ago where our team was placed in the silver bracket. This is a 2014 team, and they finished, I think, third out of the four teams. The first game they won 3-2. Second game they lost 3-2. The third game they got blown out 9-0. And two messages from parents saying we got to talk on Monday. I talked to one of the parents. They said, "Oh, it's ridiculous. We got blown out. We're missing these things from the team. If you don't improve them, I'm going to leave." And I said, "Okay, let me ask you this $1 million question." They're like, "What?" I said, "How far away are we from that team from level wise?" He said, "About a year." So I said, "Knowing that we're a year away from this team, you're that upset about the result?" He's like, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, explain to me why." He's like, "Well, we should be closer." I said, "Okay, I understand that you think we should be closer. I think your anger or your frustration's in the wrong area because this team clearly should be a gold bracket team. They purposely place themselves in the silver bracket to get the result, right?" So those things happen. And then you have things like tournament teams where you get the selection of the best kids possible in whatever area you take them to a tournament, you can stomp everybody.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of stuff like that where it's incentivizing Saturday and Sunday versus what's in the best interest of children.
Yeah, no, because like you said, that's how these clubs make money. You win on Saturdays, that's what brings people in. They want to go play for that club, and that then you have 8 teams in the same age group, and like that's how they make the money. And it's like, what is really happening with these kids? How are they individually developing at that point? But I think a lot of people, kind of like myself, are quick to identify like the flaws in the system, right? And it's like, how can we fix the system? And a lot of people want to address, oh, how we can change these different things. I think your perspective is a little bit different where you go to how can we address this? How can we fix the system? I think, and from my understanding and a lot of what I've seen of your content is how can we educate the parents? Like how can we educate the parents? That's how we fix the system. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is towards parents because they're the consumer, right? So if the consumer is educated and they know what to look for, then they're not going to make the same mistakes and they know where to actually spend their time, their money, their resources to improve their child. Now, using the number of 80%, which I think is low, if you could swing that to 50-50, you would have better programming because then clubs wouldn't be able to get away with murder. I mean, they're essentially getting away with murder because kids are getting 50 touches on the ball in practice because they're scrimmaging 77, 99, 11v11, essentially every single practice, or other things that they shouldn't be doing when we're talking about kids playing football. And I don't know about you, James. When I was a kid, I wanted to have the ball at my feet. I wanted to play small sided games, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. And I think that is the foundation, especially in today's day and age. When we have children that have iPads, have cell phones, have any distraction they could possibly have in this world compared to a lot of other countries, then yes, if we don't, or I should say, they're going to go to where they have fun first. What's more fun for the average? And let's just think of average, the average 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old. Well, it's going to be Brawl Stars. It's going to be Fortnite. It's going to be Roadblocks.
Yeah.
It's not going to be playing goalkeeper or center back in a 7 versus 7 game. So that's why I really think this mindset shift of meeting children at their level is huge. And there's a couple of countries now, like I just saw a thing from Ireland, Northern Ireland come out saying that, or maybe the Republic of Ireland talking about how they're changing age group formatting. Italy's changed age group formatting. Germany's changing age group formatting because they're all recognizing the same issues that I'm discussing. Children have other interests now because of the technological advances, and let's embrace that and provide a better or the best, what I call soccer experience possible. It's not complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely 100%. I definitely agree with everything you said. And I think, yeah, it's just like, especially at those young ages and kind of on your website, you talk about the ages of 6 to 12 being the most crucial development years for the players. Why do you see it that way?
I think it's kind of a two-parter, and I could even, reframe it to you, but we both played. We both know that those are kind of like the golden years of development, right? So like especially technically, and I would even say younger technically too. That's why I really recommend like football education development starting at home. And this is where I think there's a huge gap in the market. But the 6 to 12 range is where you're going to kind of find out three things. Does the kid love the ball? Does the kid love the game? And how far are they willing to take it? Well, if you don't provide them the right support, the right training, the right environment, the stats are telling us that 75% of children across all sports are quitting by 13 years old. So that target range of 6 to 12 is so important if we don't just want to talk about national team players. We're just talking about growing the sport culturally. If we want to have the next generation of kids playing football and then building that cultural thing of pick up football and things like that, then if kids are quitting by 13 and don't want to play football anymore, that's a huge opportunity miss.
Yeah. No, no, for sure. And I think kind of to piggyback off your point too, like when you're looking at it too, just if you're just talking about the development of the soccer player in general, like holistically, it's like number one, and kind of like how I explain to people, in my opinion, is it's like building a house. Like that foundation is built on their love for the game, and then right with that is their technical ability. And the most important time to develop that is what you're saying, those golden years of 6 to 12. And then when they get to 12, 13, that's when you bring in more of like the physical development,
Right.
the team tactics, all those sort of things. But it's like that's what's most important, putting that individual development first at those young ages so that you're equipping them to succeed once they hit 13, 14, and the competition and the wins and losses matter a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at 15 plus, that's when it really starts to take hold of importance. But it's like if I were to ask you the same type of question, I mean, you've been around now, you're training players, like correct. I mean, either I'm wrong or I'm right, but what is your take on it? Are we meeting children at their level? Are they good enough? Are they enjoying the sport enough? Like, what do you see?
No, I mean, for me personally, I think it's a little bit of a mix, like of everything. Like different players come from different situations. I think there's good clubs, there's bad clubs. More than anything, I think it's good coaches and bad coaches. You can be in a club that doesn't necessarily do things holistically the right way, but you have some good coaches that foster kind of what we're talking about, the love for the
Right.
game, keeping kids engaged, getting a lot of touches. And then you have the alternative too, where coaches don't exactly know what they're doing. Maybe they're just doing 7v7s, 99s the entire practice, only working patterns, all those sorts of things. So I think it really is just kind of dependent on a situational basis. But truthfully, more often than not, I don't think the kids are being equipped in the proper way. Like there's so many kids that are coming into me, and even like what you said, there's a lot of conversation with the parents and when I'm working individual and group sessions, and oh, they didn't have a great game this weekend. They didn't do this, they didn't do this.
Sure.
Right. It's it's pretty crazy. So I think kind of to what you said too, the education for the parents is so important too, because how the parents communicate with their kids
Yep.
plays a huge role in whether or not they love the game.
Can I give you a funny story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, last year I coached for my club. I coached the 2014 team. That was probably top 20, let's just say 20 in the state. So very good. We went to a tournament called the Easter International Cup, and we played top bracket. We happened to play against the two teams that made it to the gold bracket final. So in our group, that's a quote unquote group of death,
Yeah.
right? We're going to compare it some way. The two teams, one was from Costa Rica, one was a tournament team from Miami. We played both those teams. They beat us. They both went to the final of the gold bracket. Now, we didn't perform up to the level that we probably should have. It happens. It's football. And I had two kids quit that next day, Monday, Tuesday, because of poor results from that tournament. And the feedback that we did an exit interview, the feedback we got from parents was, Kyle, when we go to tournaments, we want to win. And I'm going, okay. And one specific example is my normal goalkeeper from that tournament, 3 days before the event, declined the tournament. So I'm calling the mom going, hey, the tournament's in 3 days. Why is your child not coming? They said, oh, logistical issues, can't make it. I'm like, great. So I happened to just pick up another goalkeeper. At the time, wasn't at the same level.
Yeah.
So Kim on the roster.
Right.
So the kid, this normal starting goalkeeper for that team, shows up the last day when they've already declined the tournament, didn't pay for the tournament, and didn't let anybody know, especially me, that they were coming. So I see this kid walk up and I'm going, what are you doing here? So I didn't play him the whole first half because didn't pay, didn't they declined it, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we played the second half. So we ended up losing that game 2-1. And so that parent happened to bring up, oh, well, we want to win these games. And I'm like, yeah, I do too, but I'm not sacrificing, proper etiquette, proper professionalism because you just want to win on a weekend. So that I think is the biggest mindset shift that is required to change. But what I have found is parents pay to see their child win. They're not paying to go to these games to see their child lose. No, I haven't met one parent that that I should say that is uneducated or has ignorance debt that doesn't understand what proper development looks like, that is okay with their child losing.
Yeah.
Right? They want to win.
Yeah. And I mean, like to what you said, I think, and like I have the same conversation a lot, and I think it comes down to like I don't think people understand like we're not saying like that we don't want to win or that the competitive drive isn't important. Like that's ultimately what determines not just in soccer but in life. Like having that competitive drive, wanting to win, is super important. It's just at those young ages, you shouldn't sacrifice the development of the player or the person
Yep.
just in order to win. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like the individual development is what comes first, but it's like people don't realize that or they don't completely understand it. They're ignorant to it. And it kind of has like it has a trickle down effect to how youth soccer is in the US right now.
Can I ask you this question?
Yep.
How many players from your club team, so when you were like 16, 17, 18, went on to play college soccer or go to the next level in general?
We had 22 on our roster my senior year. I think about seven went on to play in college.
Seven.
Yeah.
7 out of 22. And it's only going to get worse now. So the reason I asked that question is like the possibility of a player making it is very small. And I'm gonna guess that you guys didn't go to the same college.
Three of us actually did, but only
Okay,
two of us
three of you
graduated from the same college. Yeah.
did. Okay. So you guys are a fluke, right?
Yeah.
That
Oh, for
stuff.
sure. No
Yeah.
doubt. Yeah.
So just the reason I'm bringing this up is because 7 out of 22 went to college. What is the percentage on that? That's like 16%, something like that. I don't know the exact number, but it's something around that percentage point, give or take five.
Not very
And
good.
and you probably played on a pretty damn good team.
Yeah, we were the
So
best team in the state my senior year.
if you're getting seven players to go to college out of a 22-man roster, you guys probably had a decent program.
Yeah, definitely.
So those are things that I think parents like don't understand. That's why like I really emphasize the individual development piece because it's great that you play on a great team, but if your child, little Johnny's not good enough, in the long run, it doesn't make a difference. They're not going to be good enough to get to the next level. And I'll give you one final example. I live 30 minutes away from UCF. The entire starting 11 of UCF is international.
Yeah.
If that doesn't raise red flags for every single parent, person, staff, and then you look at the two teams that went to the final of the NCAA tournament. I think out of the 22 players, it was like 17 are international players.
Yeah.
Like, is that not alarm bells for everybody to be like, hey, something is going wrong here? But most parents are going to ignore that point.
No, that I played D2, so it was even worse.
Right.
Like it's a whole separate conversation of what you're talking about you talk about the US system and like who are we really trying to serve in the US? Like then you look at these colleges and it's so many internationals at the D2 level. My freshman year in college, I was 18. I was a starting center back. We go into the NCAA tournament. I'm playing a striker who's 29. Like I
Right.
get when you get to the professional level, that's how it is. But the D2, the average age in the Final Four is like 24 years old. So
Yep.
it's like, what are we really fostering? You know, you're bringing in these internationals that are like 26, 27. We're not putting first the development of the US, the young players. Like we're not doing that. Like it it's just crazy. But also, like to your point about my team, like, right, we had seven guys going to college. Like, that's really good. But also, once you get to that high level, not only do you have to be talented enough to reach that level, but you have to have a lot of other things as a person to be equipped to have success at that level, right? And all of that is built up, not just like we talk about the technical individual development, it's the soccer, the athletic aspect of it too, but developing them as a person, being and giving them the work ethic, the professional environment that they need, preparing them to succeed when they get to college, when they play in the professional ranks, right? Because we had seven guys go play, and I think only three of us played the full 4 years and finished, right?
There you go.
Like
Yeah.
still you get the guys that get to that level and it's just different. They're not cut out for it. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So it's
Different beasts together, all together.
yeah, yeah,
It's
for
crazy,
sure.
man. And then I'll give you, we were talking about like why do I think 6 to 12 is so important. So um, this week has been kind of a special week for me because there's one, like, actually two. I can't announce the second one yet, but I had a training group of kids that I worked for 2.5 years. That we trained 4 times a week in the morning, 6:30 to 8. And two of them, one of them is signing a professional contract in Colombia. The other one, he has not signed professional yet, but he just made the first team roster. He's been training with the professionals or the first team for about a year now, give or take. And he made the game day roster of the first team squad. Didn't play. He's now traveling to play in the UEFA Conference League game. I don't know if we don't know if he's going to play, but he's a 17-year-old American kid that left here at 12 to go to Europe because his parents were able to move there for work reasons.
Yeah.
And he may play tomorrow. So all we ever did, the point that I'm making with this is all we ever did during those, we trained 4 times a week with a group of 6. 5 of them went to the next level. We did an hour and a half sessions. It was 45 minutes to an hour every single day of technical work. So juggling, dribbling, passing, receiving, pick your thing.
Yeah.
And then 30 to 45 minutes of implementation. So 1v1, 2v2, 3v3. Every single day. It wasn't 7 versus 7. It wasn't 9 versus 9. It wasn't 11v11. And it's just providing the kids the tools, the skills that is required to even have a chance to play the game at a higher level. The chance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that's awesome. That's like kind of a testament to like what you're saying, and like the proof is in the pudding, where you go develop those kids at those young ages and then you set them up for success when they get to the older ages and maybe they go.
Just the tools.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of all you're equipping them with. Um, Kind of in our conversation and like on your Instagram, like you call yourself Angry Soccer Guy, like you can see the passion that you have for all of this. Why is this mission so near and dear to you?
It's near and dear to me because my parents were not educated. My parents were like every other soccer parent that doesn't know anything. They were not athletic. They had no athletic backgrounds. My parents didn't play any sports outside of like middle school soccer or elementary school, right? So like nothing. And it's only because, and I tell everybody this, it's only because my parents found a coach that had, he was from Africa, so he's from Cameroon specifically, but a French upbringing, that it's because of him that I'm even here today. If it wasn't for this gentleman, I would not be here today having this conversation with you. I'd probably be on the sideline screaming somewhere, kick it, boot it, send it, smash it, clear it. My teams would be smashing the ball down the field. So I feel I have a moral responsibility to provide as much value and educate as many people as possible to at least be the voice of reason, the voice of change. And I think the first year and a half of me posting content, everybody thought I was angry. So I had multiple people say, "Oh, you're just angry. Oh, you're just angry." So I was like, okay, I'll just embrace this angry thing.
Yeah.
And since I've developed this residency program, I feel way better because I can see the potential of things like this. So one example would be probably like you probably attempted to build like a pickup culture. I've done it for years in club soccer to get pickup. I've even brought plastic bags, put them together to make a ball, and I took the real balls away. And I'm like, you kids are going to play with this. And we would get, 10, 12 kids to show up. Right. So it's very disheartening. Then just on the second day of our residency program, we leave our fields open. Kids get a school, the kids get a break from school. They're going straight to the field to play immediately. And like that to me is to basically like you can't pay for that. What fee are you going to pay to get that type of experience? Every single day, the kids in our program, which we have 10 in the school. We have a total of 28 because there's another 18 that train with us only. But the 10 that do the school, they play pickup soccer 2 to 4 times a day, assuming that they don't get in trouble in school.
Yeah.
So as long as they're doing their grades and they're taking care of their school, they have good grades, they're allowed to play, they're not causing mayhem in the classroom, they're allowed to go play on breaks. And they get 2 breaks every hour and a half. And they go play football right away.
Yeah. I think, first of all, that's awesome. But like to what we're talking about too, like that unsupervised time where they can go play pickup, be creative, do whatever they want to do. There's no repercussions for them trying new things. Not that there is like at your residency, but like even kids that are playing normal club, right? a lot of them are scared to go make mistakes. So having that pickup culture, you go out, you do whatever you want with your friends. That's why the US, when you think of US soccer, you do not think creativity. You don't think flair because we have zero pickup culture. The places that play the most pickup, you think of Brazil, that's where you think creativity,
Yeah.
flair. They have all these different attributes, right? And that's something that one of the last guys that I talked with on my podcast, I played with him professionally, and they're working on kind of the street soccer pickup culture and starting a company based on that. And it's like, that's great. That's more of the type of things that we need to foster the development and create creativity, flair, all that stuff in the US. But you go and look like where I train at in one of my neighborhoods where I grew up in, three full-size soccer fields. They have goals there. I have a net that I leave up all the time. There's never anyone on the fields.
Club soccer. It's the culture of club soccer.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you just talked about the creativity part. So like I put a tweet out or an X, whatever you want to call it, X post, and I put this question out there and I was like, if we think about children and the jerseys that they buy, I was the same way. Where you're buying number 7, you're buying number 10, you're buying number 9, you're buying number 11, all the attacking flair players.
Yeah.
Yeah. On our sidelines across the country, you got adults on both sides, parents and coaches screaming, pass, pass, or kick it, or boot it, or send it, or whatever verbiage it is. And it's like, but we look at all the kids. Like we have kids usually once a month or twice a month. We allow the kids to come in with their favorite jersey. It's Lamine Yamal, it's Messi, it's Ronaldo, right? It's Holland. It's all these guys that are superstar attacking players that are probably maybe not except for Holland or Mbappe. You can use Mbappe as well or Neymar. Pick them, but these are superstar attacking players that take risk, that dribble, that beat men, that beat multiple men, that don't care what anybody says, and they do it on repeat over and over and over again. And we sit here and we go, why are we as a country not developing more players, say like Pulisic? Let's just use Pulisic.
Yeah.
Well, they're never, I shouldn't even say never. If they're not allowed the freedom to express themselves, like you mentioned with creativity, when are they ever going to get there? And then it was funny because a guy responded to me and he goes, well, children should know when to pass and when to dribble. And I replied to him, I said, yes, okay, great. Where are they going to actually learn that? It's doing it incorrectly or correctly,
Yeah.
thousands upon thousands of times, and then having an adult guide them to make a better decision. It's really not rocket science, but I think a lot of us, from an adult perspective, make it rocket science. But it's like you think about children, how they learn and they grow, or even adults, right? You go through stuff all the time,
Yeah.
and you learn best through experience. So when a kid decides to dribble and he loses the ball, yeah, instead of just getting upset at him, why don't we look to guide him and correct the behavior? But I think that right there is probably the biggest missing link because people will say, oh, well, they over dribble and they lose the ball, they run into traffic. Yeah, well, did you guys look to guide that player through that situation? If you're not guiding them, then yes, they're going to make the same mistake over and over and over again, of course.
Yeah. Or the alternative of they go make that mistake like what you're doing. They're trying to do a little too much. They start getting yelled at all the time. Now they're touching it. They're getting off it in 1, 2 touches every single time. And they lose all the confidence and they're not doing that. You talk about all those players that you mentioned. They all have their own creativity flair. They all add their own personality to the game, right? You look at a lot of the players in the US and all these different clubs, things have become so rigid and robotic. Like we're not creating, we never have necessarily created players with their own unique flair and their own unique traits and adding their personality to the game. And that's where, like when you bring in street soccer, pickup soccer, that's where you develop those things, right? And kind of to your point too, and like what we were talking about, one of my buddies that I talked with, he was coaching, he was an assistant coach in the Saudi First Division. And I kind of asked him when he was playing in the US what he thought was different about the US youth system compared to kind of where he's grown up playing in a bunch of different countries in Europe. And he said one of the craziest things to him was when he would go out and kind of be at the fields when there's 11, 12-year-olds playing on the weekend, the way that the parents and coaches would be screaming at the players. Like if they made a mistake, he was like he didn't understand it. He'd never seen anything like that. And it just like kind of further goes to our point of when you're doing that, that kills. It's not fostering growth mindset. It's killing their creativity, their confidence, all of that. So
So we just had a 2015 come to our program for the residency, and the parent asked me like, okay, what's the goal with my son? And he's very low skill, zero skill. So I said, okay, we got 3 things that we're going to work on. The primary one, 2 would be the technical ability, the implementation of said technical ability in a 1-versus-1 situation, and then 3, the mental confidence that in 90 days, give or take, he'll have the mental confidence to go do a rainbow. against an opponent. That's the talking about creativity.
Yeah.
If a kid has the balls to attempt a rainbow over somebody,
Yeah.
then they're clearly brimming with confidence.
Yeah.
And that, somebody might listen to this and say, well, that's kind of extreme. That's the point. Because if they're feeling they're oozing with that type of confidence, they will take on the world. I mean, how many kids can do a rainbow in a game?
I don't think I've ever actually seen a kid that I played
So
with go beat somebody with a rainbow in a game.
I don't have a lot of kids that will do it, but we do have some, whether it's in training. Like I have one Brazilian kid, of course, he's Brazilian, right? He'll be in games and he usually plays left or right wing, and he will probably once a game attempt a rainbow. And I'm like, dude, go for it. It's fine. It's okay. If you lose it, just go work and get it back. It's okay. But
Right.
he's oozing with that confidence to be like, you know what? Give me the ball. I have the ability and the confidence to do this skill, which is, I think, for children, and he's 10, right? Like that is just the fundamental piece we want to have for kids is the ability to go beat people. But that's why I use that rainbow reference, because if they have that confidence, they will take on anybody at any point, anytime.
For sure. And I want to hone in on something you said too. Like we're talking about the rainbow, the creativity, but like what you said, cool, dude, who cares? You lost it, go work hard and win it back. Like that's all that matters. You make a mistake, all you can do off that is go work hard, try to get the next thing right, win it back. And so long as you're encouraging that in the work rate, like that's where they get brimming with confidence and they get all those
Yep.
attributes to go be the best version of themselves. And I think one of the things for me that I learned a lot going from club to college to playing in the lower divisions is the guys that I saw succeed and make it to the next level that are still playing in USL, MLS, whatever it may be, mentally they were so much stronger than everybody else. When you get to the highest levels, now there's the Messis, the Neymars, the Ronaldos that are a lot more talented than everybody else, but the middle of the pack is so similar talent-wise, it's hard to differentiate at the highest levels. Where the guys really differentiate is the mental side of the game. Can they go do whatever, make a mistake, not care, keep playing
Yep.
hard, get the next thing right? All those things. That's where the real difference lies of the club and even the college level to the next levels. Is just that mental aspect of the game. And I don't think at the youth levels really we really talk about that enough or even at all a lot of the time. And it's something that's imperative if you want to make it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is just so important because I agree with you. I think the difference of level and skill when you start getting to that level becomes less and less. Obviously, you have the exception to the rule, but the mental ability to overcome, and you probably seen the quote. I remember listening or watching or somebody either I read it or listened to it, and it was Pep talking about why he loves Phil Foden because he's got the mind of a goldfish, makes a mistake, in
Yeah.
3 seconds, it's gone. It's just like move on and it's okay. Right? At the end of the day, the way that I frame it to kids is if a mistake happens, the opponent doesn't score, it doesn't matter because it didn't go in the back of our net. And then if it did go in the back of our net, then it should motivate you to want to go correct the situation, not beat yourself up. It's fine.
Yeah.
You're 10 years old, let it go, move on with your day and get the goal back. No problem. No
Yeah.
harm, no foul. But one thing that you mentioned earlier that I want to come back to is you talked about, and I'd love to ask this question. You talked about you have some good coaches, some not good coaches. I would love to kind of get your perspective. How many coaches do you think are quote unquote good versus maybe not so good?
I would say the good. Like if I have a high standard of what good is, and it's like what we're discussing and talking through, I would definitely say there's more bad than good.
Like
Especially,
if you put a percentage on it, do you want to like don't have to be necessarily accurate, but ballpark it. What do you think it is?
yeah, I would say like 75-25, bad to good.
I would even say higher. I was going to say like 90-10. And the reason why I say it that way is because I don't know about you, but I only have a C license from US Soccer. And I am not looking to go above that for
Yeah.
the specific reason that going to a B or going to an A, if my goal is to stay working with children, then one, it doesn't really matter. Two, it doesn't apply to the environment that I want to work in. Three, yes, getting those licenses can help you, great. But the biggest kicker for me and the way that we interview coaches is one of the first questions I ask is, how do you deal with children? And then I'll give them specific examples that happen and be like, how are you going to handle this?
Yeah.
Because working with kids is way bigger than what license you have, right? Like the best example I give is, and most coaches I've seen that have an A license, have a B license, any license, like a kid's crying. As long as they don't have a broken leg or something, there's a very simple way to get them to stop crying, and most people don't know how to solve that problem. And the way that I always do it is you start asking them questions. So, for example, we had a kid crying this morning because he lost a game. He was playing one-on-one, he lost. Okay. I go up to him, I'm like, okay, what'd you have for breakfast? Gives him a second, stops crying. He's starting to think about what he had for breakfast. I'm like, okay, what'd you have for dinner last night? He's like, so tears are no longer flowing, right? He's okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, I had chicken and rice. Okay, great, chicken and rice. How was school yesterday? School, it was good. What'd you do? I did math, I did science, social studies, right? And immediately they stop crying. As long as they don't have a broken leg or something and they're not seriously injured, then there's easy ways to connect with children. And what I have found is the majority of coaches do not know how to work with children, especially in that target range of 6 to 12. Yeah, they might have the license. It's great. But the license means nothing if you don't know how to work with the kid.
Yeah. No, no, I couldn't agree more. And even you're talking about the licenses, like I don't even have any licenses. Like I got done playing and all of what I'm doing, like I said, kind of I'm not in the club scene. I'm more of trying to be the supplement to the individual development. And so like everything that I'm doing is like anecdotal experience of I've been there, I've played at the high levels, I've gone through good coaches, bad coaches. I know kind of what the kids need to develop, and a license isn't going to teach me that. You know what I
Nope.
mean? Especially the
You'll laugh at this though, James. You'll find this funny. So I went to an event which was the FYSA AGM, which is like our association general meeting, whatever.
yeah.
And they had some U.S. soccer reps there. So I'm talking to them. They had like an open discussion or whatever, and it was about licensing and whatnot. And the way that they framed it to us was, yes, we have the licensing. I said, hey guys, there's holes in your licensing. And they're like, okay. And they said, yeah, the expectation is that the clubs handle ongoing education. And I said, you do realize that's not happening, right? They're like, what do you mean? I said, dude, I have worked for multiple clubs. I've been a director at two different clubs. I've been a director of my own club. I own my own club. And what I can tell you verbatimly from just my experience is that there is no onboarding, there is no training, there is no preparation, there's no nothing. And I created a solution for our program. So we have onboarding and training that's virtual for our own staff, and we hire somebody so they go through that before they can even work with a child. That's not even safe sport or background checks or anything like that. That's just simply what we have, and we want them to do to implement our curriculum.
Right.
Now, like perfect example, I got a very, very good friend of mine. He works for an organization that has the club has 13,000 players. Ridiculous number amount of kids.
Yeah.
He got hired 2 years ago. When he got hired, the first question he asked was, can you guys send me the curriculum, the philosophy, the game model? The response, sorry, we don't have one. If you have any specific exercise questions, ask your age group coordinator. But you have 13,000 kids,
Yeah.
right? So like if that's not like bringing awareness to everybody, like, hey, there is something wrong here, then we should all take a step back and be like, who are we actually serving?
Right.
So I think that's a fundamental issue when you have U.S. soccer on one side pretending that there's not a problem and that they put the expectation on clubs to say, hey, this is your problem, deal with it. But bro, I'm under U.S. soccer. Nobody comes to talk to us about coaching education or onboarding processes or continuous. Like, there's none of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. But then they're going to ask us to do this. So the communication lines are very blurred. I would say it's just because they don't care. They get paid. They move on with their day, and that's fine.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that's definitely a red flag when you look at the club system and you're talking to a club of that magnitude that has that amount of reach and that many kids that they're developing, and they don't have like a fundamental system that kind of goes through that. But I mean, that kind of seems like par for the course for US soccer, like as a whole. Like it
Yep.
seems that everything is so divided. We've got what feels like 30 different leagues throughout the entire US that all seem to be competing with each other at the US soccer level. And it's like, what are we like what is the ultimate goal of the US youth soccer system? Like it should be to develop players to play on the national team, but that's definitely not what it is. Like that's not how the system or the model is set up to
You,
be. That's not what it's set up to produce.
you know ODP, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you've probably seen this. I got a kick out of this about 6 months ago. I saw they have ODP national teams. And I'm like, what in the hell is an ODP national team?
I didn't know they had ODP national teams.
Okay, well, so when you grew up, probably like me, ODP was at one time a pathway to get to the national team.
Yeah, it was a premier program when I played, and they had the regional team, and could get called into camps and stuff. Yeah.
So where I'm going with this is just for them to stay relevant, they created their own national team program. So if you go to ODP's Instagram page or whatever,
Yeah.
I saw this when they went to the Dallas Cup. So I guess it was a little bit more than 6 months, 8 months, whatever it was. And it said ODP national team '07, ODP national team '05. And I'm going, just for you guys to stay relevant, fine. But you call yourself a national team? Like, what national team is playing in Dallas Cup?
Yeah.
Poor, it's a poor choice of words, but for a marketing standpoint, it's great because you go, oh, I'm on the national team.
Yeah.
So it's just buying into the fact of ignorance, debt, uneducated parents, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. Just selling into that ignorance and selling to the people the uneducated that hear that name, think what the title is, and try to go play at that level. And they
Do you have
think
any experience with futsal?
say that again.
Do you have any experience with futsal?
I do not have much experience at all with
They have a
futsal.
very similar thing with the USYF pathway. They have a USYF national team.
Okay.
So it's not even actually directly affiliated to US Soccer. I think they just became recently, but they created the USYF national team. So kids get to wear the jersey. What I will say to their benefit, at least they are taking kids internationally, but it's
Yeah.
not free. Parents are paying for it because it's not the official national team.
Right.
Right? It's USYF national team. So United States Youth Futsal. But in the futsal game, there's USYF, there's United Futsal, there's USSF, there's AMF. So I mean, I just gave you 4 or 5 organizations right there, all competing in the same space for futsal.
For futsal, yeah, that's the craziest part. That's just for futsal.
Futsal.
No,
Yeah,
it's like great. It's crazy for me because I went and played in college for a couple of years, came back, played in lower division professional for a couple of years. Then when I came back, I'm 6 years removed from playing club soccer and I'm starting to get into coaching and talking to parents. And I legitimately had to relearn the entire process of what matters, what doesn't, all these different leagues, all these different. Because for me, when I played, it was DA. DA was the top, and there was state league, and state league really mattered. State league is almost irrelevant now. Like that's not really a thing now. There's MLS Next, ECNL, all these different leagues. So it's just crazy, and it would just be for me. It's hard to know and to learn. Imagine someone that knows nothing about soccer. How could they? And that's a lot to ask them to learn and do. So it's just crazy that we've made it so hard for these parents to figure out what is optimal when really all they want to do is do what's best for their kids. That's all they're trying to do.
and there's no clear path.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
there is no one way to go. And to your point, I think all the leagues are kind of combating each other to create that pathway
Yeah.
to be the league, but they're all fighting each other. And it's just like, and that's why I always ask the question, who are we doing this for? Like, I know you'll find this crazy. I know guys that are in charge of ECNL regionally, they're making over 100K a year on ECNL just as a director.
Yeah.
And it's why are your directors making 100K a year for an ECNL league in a region?
Yeah.
So like, what's the actual incentive for? Like, why are you doing this? It's because of money. Fine. But this is why I always say, like, okay, everybody can do this for money. You can do it for money. I can do it for money. Anybody can do it for money. But when you are purposely neglecting children or taking away from their experience or neglecting their, whatever word you want to use to describe it, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
And and you're not perfect, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. But when there's a clear discrepancy about doing what's in the best interest of children, that's where it's like, for me, it's like, okay, what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Yeah.
The only reason why any of us are in business, whether it's me, you, or any other program, is because of children. Right? I mean, that's why you're in business. You're able to do this because you have children that, or parents that pay you to train their kid. I used to be in private training all the time.
Yeah.
I had parents pay me to train their kid. Now
Yeah.
I'm in a different business. But the only reason why I can is because of the consumer of parents.
Yeah.
And if you're going to negatively impact children, that's where I draw the line and say this doesn't work for me.
No, I agree 100%. And the way I look at it, like in my business, I think kind of we talk about the pay to play model and the negatives of all of that. But the way I look at it is like my number one goal is serving these kids. And I think in what you're talking about too, like it's great if you make a whole lot of money so long as your number one goal in this is to serve the kids and do what's best for them and to do right by them. Then you can make any amount of money that you want, so long as that's the number one and that's what you're always coming back to and that's what you're trying to do first and foremost.
And so that's why like we adopted the 3 pillars, right? Improving the person, improving the student, improving the athlete, because I don't think you could ask for more. You want kids to be good people. You want them to do well in school, and you want them to improve as a player and an athlete in general. So it's like, just don't neglect or don't pull from or don't rip from those 3 pillars.
Yeah.
So if a club is going to provide soccer, make sure they're a good person, they behave the right way, make sure that they have a good education. If they don't do well in school, they're not allowed to train. So like in our program, if any child is not performing in the classroom, say they have poor grades or they're not turning in their assignments, they do not train.
Yeah.
We had a kid this week miss 4 days of training because of poor grades in the classroom. So while everybody else is outside in our fields training, this one kid sitting in the classroom watching everybody else practice.
Yeah.
It's holding a standard of improving person, student, athlete.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's great. Kind of going back into Beast Residency, what would you say is, the ultimate grand vision behind Beast Residency?
Moving players.
To Europe, to overseas, to
Well, okay, let me take a step back. The first thing is make sure they're ready for life. First thing,
sure.
foremost. So if we're going to talk like specifically about football, yeah, our goal would be to help them get to college or pro. So it's obviously, again, meeting them at their level. Are they able to go to college? Are they able to go pro? Yes or no? We help them. If we don't think they're ready, we don't help them. And we're very clear with, I mean, we don't have anybody at that age range yet. The next 2, 3 years probably. But I think fundamentally the first piece is making sure they're prepared for life, being a good person, ready to go by 18 years old. Second step, making sure they have the grades to go to college. Third step would then be if they're good enough to go to college, great. If they're good enough to go to pro, great. We have some opportunities that could present themselves where they could, if they're good enough, get them to certain opportunities.
Yeah.
But the end goal would be to move players. That's why we do this.
Yeah. What would you say, like, what's the oldest kid that you work with right now?
They're 2009 birth year.
2009. Okay, so is there like a limit where do you plan on working through with him up until college, or if he signs a contract, or is there an age frame?
Yeah.
That again?
So again, we're just starting, right? So we started in August. So we've
Right.
been operating for almost a year. The oldest we have is 2009. The youngest we have is 2018. We have a couple in between there. So our goal would be to first build teams. So we're working on building teams for next school year. So we can have teams that we're forming so they don't have to play club anymore.
Okay.
They can work in our program, which means they're done by 5 o'clock. They get evenings back with mom and dad, and then they come back in the morning and train again, and then do school and whatnot.
Yeah.
So the goal would be, yes, we would have our first class, our first team, graduate with us, move on to go to the next level if they're able to do so.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. How would you say I know it's pretty brand new. How would you say everything's going so far? How's the process going?
I would say I'm almost perfectly happy. I mean, there's obviously, I don't think there's perfect in anything, but I would say that I have found my joy again from doing this. The only two challenges that we're probably facing are probably like anybody, facilities. Like we have a great facility, but it's limited.
Yeah.
Example, we have one classroom, we have 4 5v5 fields. I don't have a full 11v11 field. So those are things that objectively we have to break and challenge.
Yeah.
And the other side is, there's still sometimes commitment issues that we face from club because we don't have dorms. So because the kids are not living on campus with us, there are times that we'll get a message that we start training at 8:30, we get a message at 8, hey, kid's not coming today.
Yeah.
And that is obviously, as you know, beyond frustrating when you're creating a session plan and you sometimes you can vary and you can say, okay, I can get away with 14,
Right.
but I'm planning for 17 type of thing. But then you have 5 kids say, I'm not coming this morning.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm sure you've dealt with that. And it's just like those are little things that have happened. But for the most part, I'm way happier because we have the structure, we have the ability, we have the platform we believe that can get children through these 3 pillars.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. We're coming up on just over 45 minutes time here. So let's kind of go into one or kind of 2 final questions for you, and then we'll kind of close it out. So
Yep.
with that being said, in this little bit of added time portion, the final question I want to end with for you is kind of a 2-pronged question. What would you say to a parent with a 12-year-old who their child's dream is going pro? What would you say to the parent, and what would you say to the kid? What would your advice be for them?
My advice for a kid that's 12 years old, not know anything about them, one, I would tell the parents, you want me to talk to parents first?
Sure, parents first.
Great. So what I would tell the parents is, first I would ask how much do they know about the system, process, journey, and they're going to tell me whatever the answer is. Let's assume it's nothing. First thing I would do is say, okay, you know nothing. Educate yourself. I have a completely free program that I put together. It's on my YouTube channel, which I call the Youth Soccer Playbook. And that goes from, it's my opinion of what I would do with my son or daughter when I have one, of what steps I would take from birth all the way through to potentially signing a professional or collegiate scholarship. It's the exact roadmap. Every single, I didn't forget one thing from the second they're born all the way through to getting to this point. So I would say, go watch that, read it, listen to it, however you want to consume the content, do it. If you have questions, ask. And then I would say, listen, if your child is telling you that they want to be a professional, understand that if you're going to support them on this journey, it's either all in or all out.
Yeah.
Like, I think one of the biggest flaws people can make is saying, "Hey, have a backup plan." Like if you speak that out loud, you're already saying failure.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't like think about a practice. That's why we think education is so important, right? It's fundamental, but I think that's a priority, not a backup.
Yeah.
So make sure that fundamentally they're getting educated. That's part of the journey of becoming a good person. And then if you're going to do this, invest in them, but do it in the right way. Support them. Don't yell at them. Don't scream at them. The only thing that I would say are non-negotiables for a 12-year-old would be work ethic.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. They're going to make mistakes. And then the way that I always frame it to parents is if your child makes mistakes, here's how I would handle it. This is what I do to handle it with children today is let's say I present them in things saying, hey, this is wrong. They challenge me on a great challenge me. Capture video, sit them down, show them the video. Don't say anything other than, what do you see here?
Yeah.
And then let them tell you what they see. They may lie to you and say, oh, I don't see anything. There's nothing wrong. Okay, great. And then you continue to reframe and ask questions. Okay. Then you say, like, for example, they say, I didn't see this. Okay, well, look at this specific moment. What do you see here? Right. And then you're challenging them to give you those answers. But, bro, you know as well as I do, James, the guys that make it to the top are self-sufficient, self-independent. They're on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't get to the NISA level or college level having mom and dad hold your hand all the way through.
Yeah. No, my parents knew nothing about soccer, so that wouldn't have done much.
So I think fundamentally right there, that's the first thing. On the flip side, if I'm going to talk to a kid, the same way that I would tell you about this Nick player that I'm talking about, bro, if you want to go for it, go for it. But you're either all in or you're all out.
Yeah.
And take those steps. So for example, all in would be like starting to think about your nutrition, your rest, your social life, your training times. Like the benefit of Nick this is a great example. He was one of the first kids I ever saw do virtual school. So he was in school for 2.5 hours a day. And he did that at 9 and 10 years old. If you want to go to a certain level, I don't want to use the word sacrifices, but I think that'll kind of tie this together.
Yeah.
There are certain steps that I believe are required to be taken. So if this is the path you want to take, these are the steps of how some other players did it. The choice is yours. You're either all in or you're all out. And if you're going to McDonald's on a Saturday night after a game or a Saturday afternoon, you're all out.
Yeah. No, I think.
How I would frame it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it and a great way to kind of wrap everything up. Kyle, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on. You want to let people know where they can find you and kind of anything else you want to add in or kind of let us know about Beast Residency?
So you can check my personal page, Kyle C. Wilson Official. That's my Instagram, my YouTube. And then I have a X feed, which is it's just Angry Soccer Guy. You can find me there. My website is KyleCWilsonOfficial.com. I have a whole bunch of free resources on there you can check out. And I do my best to answer. I get tons of Instagram messages a day. I do my best to get to everybody. But it's pretty much a one-man show when it comes to content. So I do my best to get back to people and just, I'll continue to pump out stuff that I think is important for people to know and to help educate them. And if they have any questions, please ask. Don't hesitate.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate you jumping on.
I appreciate you having me, and it was a great conversation.
Yes, sir, definitely. That's a wrap for this episode of the Over the Line podcast, hosted by James McGee. The conversation doesn't stop here. If we want to push U.S. soccer forward, we need to keep asking the tough questions, challenging the system, and finding real solutions. Together, we can educate the next generation of players and parents, helping them navigate the system and unlock their full potential on and off the field. But if we're serious about creating more pathways of opportunity for our players, it's going to take more than just me. It's going to take all of us. What do I mean by that? If this episode brought you value, take your commitment over the line by subscribing, leaving a review, and, if you feel inspired, helping send this message not just over the line, but straight into the top corner by sharing this podcast with someone who's just as passionate about changing the game. The only way we build real change is together. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep pushing, keep improving, and let's take the game over the line.